Hello guys, so I'm going to continue on with Photoshop, and we're going to talk about what Photoshop was actually created for. Photoshop was the original photo retouching tool, and this is the powerful element of why Photoshop is really good for well, photo retouching. So as you guys know, I am a photographer as well. So I do a lot of graphic design and I do some photo work as um, well, a lot of times, as well as just not my video stuff too. So what you guys are currently seeing is one of my clients. So she has signed a release, so I can actually use some of her images. But what I want to do is I want to introduce you guys to a few of the tools that make Photoshop powerful. All right, so originally I usually have like an image that I show, but that site that had that image down or uploaded has been, well, it's gone now. So I'm going to show you with this one, and what we're going to do is you can kind of like see here's an image that I've taken, and this is the original thing. I did, however, color correct it a little bit in Adobe Lightroom for this, but aside from that, this is it. I mean, this is the kind of like the raw image that was taken. So this is the original one. This is what we're actually shooting for. So you can kind of see that, we've taken out some of the blemishes within some of her skin. And my typical rule is like if there is something that's going to be gone in a few days, I take it out. So we can see what's going on here. So we're going to kind of go just again kind of a comparison to kind of like show you some of the things that I did. Now, as you may see that I did actually take out in the original image, you can kind of see that there are some white straps there. I did take those out. It did take me a little while, so I'm not going to go through the whole how I did that, but I can go through a little bit of it. All right, so what we're going to deal with are what are some of the retouching tools. In the toolbox, you're going to see a little icon that looks like a band-aid. It's called a healing brush. The healing brush, there's a spot healing brush, patch tool, a content aware tool, and there's a red eye tool. The red eye tool I won't show because I don't have really any kind of image for that, and it is actually rarely even used. Really the only time I've ever used it was when I actually taught the class last and taught these tools. That was pretty much the last time I ever used it, and it was really a lot of the technology nowadays. If you take a picture, the software that takes the picture automatically looks for red eye and takes that out before you even see it. So we don't worry about red eye much anymore. This is really only for some old photos that may have been scanned or something like that you can actually use to take that out. All right, so we're going to go through some of these tools here, and one of them is going to be the spot healing brush. Now, the healing brush here, what we can do is it comes out as a circle, which is an indicator of your actual brush. We can use our bracket keys to increase the size of the brush or decrease the size of the brush. And what we're going to do is we can go through some of the items here. Like you can kind of see some blemishes here where our skin is never perfect. So what we can do is all we have to do is like click, hold, drag, and it analyzes what I'm brushing in. It looks for comparisons of textures next to it and places them there. All right, so I can take out a few of them here just by doing that. Okay, so you can see those little blemishes are gone. If you go up here, you can see something on her forehead. You can just take that out really quickly. Now the spot healing brush does a really good job of really quick editing if the texture is pretty similar around it. So what we're going to do is if in some cases you want to pick up a certain texture from another area, you can go to the healing brush tool. All right, the healing brush tool acts very much like our clone stamp tool. If you remember that from when you were fixing that black and white photo. All right, it picks up texture but it kind of like matches that with the color underneath of it. So it analyzes the pixels that you're actually putting it on, and it kind of like blends them together somehow. So if I go here, what I need to do is I can increase or decrease the brush. You'll want to actually have the brush very similar or close to the size of what you're putting it on. So like right here, we'll have a little blemish here. We'll go over to the next to it and we'll hold down our Alt key on a Windows platform. I believe it's the Command key on a Mac. And we'll hold down that option until we get that, so we have that cursor that looks like a target. Click, let go of everything. All right, what that does is it picked up that particular texture that you just were on. Now, if we go over in Paint, you can kind of see that if I roll over it, it kind of like looks like it's being taken out. If we click, hold, drag, you can kind of like paint over it. Now you notice that there is a little plus sign next to it. That plus sign is actually what's being picked up to place. Very much like the clone stamp tool. When you move it, that plus moves with it. Okay, so you have to be wary of that. So if we go to other areas, we can take out other little blemishes here and there. Just like so. All right. So we can work on our skin as well. So we got these areas down here. Again, you'll notice that what I'm doing is I'm sampling some areas by what I'm going to place it by. That is important because I do not want to be up in another area that has a very, very different texture. You want the textures to be somewhat similar when you're using this tool. All right. That is the healing brush. The patch tool does something a little bit different. So like if I go into certain areas like here, I have two little blemishes. It's kind of like the combination of a healing brush with the lasso tool. So if I go ahead and click, hold, drag, you're seeing what I'm doing here is I'm actually encircling the two blemishes there. If I put my cursor inside the selection area, you'll notice that my cursor changes a little bit. If I click, hold, drag, move that over, you'll see that what it's doing is it's picking up another texture. And if I let go, it places that. So now if I go over here and just click, you'll see that it was replaced by that particular texture. And I can go in other areas as well, just to take out other little blemishes here and there. Very, very simple process. Does not take very long to do. Okay. So now we'll have a little bit of fun with this one. Hopefully she doesn't mind, but you know what we can do is I'm going to go ahead and play around with her a little bit. And if I take this, you can see I can actually make her have one eye. Ah! We don't want to show that. So undo that. Here to go back. But you can see how powerful that is as blending it out. All right. So that's pretty much those retouching options. All right. How I did some of the strap here. What I tend to do is I used a combination of the clone stamp tool and some coloring options. I mean, really just kind of like painting in some of the black. So if I use my clone stamp, what I did was I basically took a certain texture that kind of related to it. Oops, not that way. Sample. And then what I did was I kind of like painted in a little bit. All right. You'll want to play around with this. This took me a while to do. Sometimes making the brush a little bit bigger tends to help as well. Kind of blends that in a little bit. So what I did was I got a little bit close to it. And then I made a selection in this area. And I'll just do this kind of quickly. To kind of like, what I did was I kind of like filled that with black. So if I go to Edit, Fill, And I'm going to choose color. And what I can do is if my cursor, you'll see the color picker window. If I move my cursor outside of it, you'll see an eyedropper show up. What I can do with that is I can sample a little bit of the color here, which is better than just me showing it in this particular area. So if I choose that and I hit OK, and then I hit OK again, it's going to fill that with that black color, as you can see. And then I pretty much kind of like erased a little bit of it, but I feathered the edge of it. So what you can do if you go out to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. No, we don't want to do that. Sorry, I meant to put that in a different layer. So if I go back, I undid there. Edit, undo. I can also do this. If I go to Select, and I go to, let's see, Modify, Feather, and I say give it a radius of maybe like, I think here, probably 2. And then I go to Edit, Fill, Color, sample that black, hit OK, and then hit OK. You'll see that it is a little bit feathered here. I probably would go up a little bit more, maybe like 5 or something like that, to kind of like blend that area in. Now, certain areas, like up in here where you got hair, what I tend to do is I like to do this when I'm dealing with hair. We have to find up here where, I think it's the, let's find it. Can't remember where it is. All right, let's go here. We're going to go down to the bottom here. You're going to look for the smudge tool. Smudge tool is kind of like this. Imagine if you're working with paint and you want to run your finger around it to kind of like move some of the paint. Same process here. What we can do is I can actually pull or make the brush bigger just like I did any of the other ones. But in here I want to make smaller because I have some hair there. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of like pull this. Pull the hair a little bit. If I go smaller, you get a little bit of hairs. I zoom in. And all I'm doing is kind of like pulling it. Just to show you here what it does. You can see I'm pulling it a little bit. Pulling that texture out. So that gets to be very convincing hair when it gets to those spots there. All right. One of the other things too is like when there are people who, when they photograph models and they go ahead and produce them for the magazine, there are some little tricks within Photoshop that can help with achieving some areas of your image that you want to, make bigger or make smaller, or some stretching of certain areas. So what we can do is, I didn't actually do this on here because I basically never go to it. Because the type of photography I do is the type of, basically keeping the client almost original, as to how it was taken. I take out some things and I'll show you a little process here that I have, but you won't. To allow for some of the smoothing of the skin. All right. So what I'm talking about is if I go up to Filter, and there's an option called Liquify. All right. Liquify is a great little addition to the program that will allow you to kind of like work with certain areas to kind of like stretch them or make them look a little bit bigger, smaller, whatever. Now, the newest version of Photoshop actually has some face recognition. All right, it actually has some face recognition technology in there that will allow you to kind of like see what's going on. So here you can kind of see there's a face aware liquify. That if I go to it, you're going to see the panels here where it says eyes. I can increase the eye size, and you can kind of see that. It's like you can see it over here on the right eye on that. Okay, right eye. Connect it. Make them a little bit bigger if I want to, or a little bit smaller if I want to do that. Okay, eye height. I can increase that, or I can increase that. It's just crazy what you can do with it. Eye width, as you can see there. All right, you can also look at the nose height, or nose, dropping the nose a little bit, nose width. It's just crazy what you can do. It's like your mouth, you can have her smile a little bit more. Upper lip, make it more full, or bring it down a little bit. Lower lip. Mouth width, mouth height, all that stuff. You can actually shape some of the forehead, chin. You can bring that in a little bit more. Jawline, you can squeeze that in, or jaw face width, expand or contract. It's just crazy what you can do. But you can also go over here. You have a set of tools. You can bring your tool in here, and what you can do is you can increase the brush using your bracket keys, and you can play around with this a little bit. So if you want to make her have a more of a pointed nose, no, Maddie will not like me doing that. But it's like you can do that, as well as some of the other things. There's twirl clockwise tool. As you can see, it's turning. Or here, there's pucker, which I know some of my students love when I do this. It's like I can play around with their eyes a little bit, make them all beady. But then there's the bloat tool to go ahead and make the mouth bigger. Just like so. Okay. Very, very powerful stuff. But again, I don't use this at all, actually. Never use this for any of my client work because that's not what I do. All right. So, but you can do this. A lot of retouchers that you see in magazines, a lot of the models that are taking their waist do not look like that. They're usually very skinny and stuff. Usually not that skinny. So what they usually do in magazines is they use a liquefy to actually make their waist a little bit smaller, make certain parts of them bigger, and so on and so forth. So we can, that's where this thing comes into play. I'm gonna cancel that because, she's as great as she is. All right, so what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna show you the skin retouching elements. So I use an extension called Portraiture, where basically what it does is it kind of like smoothens out the skin. It is an additional price. It is around $300 for it, but I'm just gonna kind of like show you it quick. Even though you won't have it, you can just watch. But Portraiture helps quite substantially when it comes to like retouching of skin. As you can see right now, it's even by default. You have these presets where you can actually just choose default. And this is the original image. This is the smoothened out image. As you can see, it looked like it's smoothed out in those areas. Maybe a little bit too much. I would just like to use normal. And I'm going to change this down a little bit as far as fine. Width, I'm not going to go as much, or medium. Large, you're going to play around those settings. Smooth, maybe not so much. think that probably looks good. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and hit OK. And it should smoothen out our skin a little bit. Here. You can kind of tell a little bit of smoothness in here. Now, sometimes what I want to do in certain cases, you can use what are called the dodge and burn methods or options. Up here, you're going to see that there is a dodge, burn, and sponge tools. The dodge tool, what it does is it basically blocks the light from getting into a certain area, which means it lightens it up. Burns deepens or darkens certain areas. These are two methods that we used to use in a dark room to kind of like get things to look a little better when we were exposing them to paper. All right, so the dodge tool, what we can do is you can actually lighten up some areas. Like maybe we want to lighten up some areas here above our cheeks or below our cheeks. And you can increase or decrease the brush as much as you want. And then there's the burn tool, which does the opposite. All right. You give her a little bit of cheekbones there. Maybe a little bit too much, but you kind of get the point. All right. Sometimes what I use the dodge tool for is sometimes I want to actually bring out some more color or lightness to the eyes. So I may just actually put this in here, bring in some lightness of the eyes a little bit. Gonna bring my exposure up a little, go a little bit faster. And then what I do as far as the sponge tool, it adds some saturation to it. Now you can saturate, so up here by mode, saturate or desaturate. I'm going to saturate this one. Give it a little bit more blue color. Now, of course, I didn't do this in her original, but you can kind of like tell that her eyes pop a little bit more, add a little bit more blue color to it when you need it. So. All right, so not so much like the original, or not so much like the newer version, but you kind of get the idea that this is what Photoshop was made for retouching of photos. All right, so this is actually my last lecture about Photoshop. I will be starting the new video will be on InDesign now. You'll have a new exercise coming up for the next one. So, all right, have a good day.